Hello, everybody, and welcome to the panel. Can immersive art save planet Earth? It's a bit of a provocative question, but I'm Dax Da Silva, founder of Age of Union. We're a conservation organization that also loves art and storytelling and the potential of art and storytelling to reach new people, because we must save planet Earth and we must use all of our talents to come together and be able to do that. I'm joined today by an incredible conservation leader and artists that have worked with me on Black Hole Experience, which is here at the expo. If you haven't caught Black Hole Experience, it's at the end of the hall, and it is a season. We're just starting season 2 of the Black Hole. It's an incredible immersive experience that connects us with the oneness of nature, the interconnectedness of nature. So, I'm gonna let everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll go into how art and storytelling can help us with this conservation and climate change fight that we're in, and how artists can really be a part of that mission. So I'll start with Wes Seacrest. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks everyone for coming here. I'm Wes Seacrest. I'm the CEO and chair of Rewild. We're an organization that works around the planet with local partners, indigenous peoples, governments, to use nature as a solution to help biodiversity, help climate, and help human well-being.
Janique?
Hi, I'm Janique from Silent Partners Studio. I'm one of the founder of that company, who is a group of designers and producer and creatives that works in the content creation. And throughout the years, we created the imagery for every facet of the entertainment industry, but as well, we participate in immersive experiences and museum experiences, like the Black Hole we did together. And what we aim for at Silent Partners Studio is to be part of a team, find creative solutions, and tailor them for the project or the client or the cause.
Hi, my name's Kelly Nunes, multidisciplinary artist, artist behind the Black Hole Experience. Practice focuses on gray areas between generative experiences, interactive experiences, scenography, multimedia.
So, for those of you that are maybe less familiar with immersive art, it's a really interesting form of storytelling, and storytelling is something that humans. It's a way to really get through and have that emotional connection around a topic. It comes back to the days of when we were cave people, and we gathered around the campfire and shared stories. And I think art and film, and now digital and physical immersive art installations, all have that ability for us to share a message with society. But also, art helps us take ourselves out of the moment and expand our perspectives, and that's why it's very, very special part of how we can change the world and create impact. So it's a very fertile area for us to expand this environmental message into. As part of this discussion, I'm going to be excited to talk about Age of Union, which is an organization that I started in 2021. We put $40 million across 10 environmental conservation projects around the world. I traveled to all of those, did films on a lot of them. So film and art have both been a big part of our journey. But we're going to be announcing today a strategic partnership with Rewild, which is an incredible organization started by conservation scientists like Wes and Russ Mittermeier and Leonardo DiCaprio, and others that have joined, and we're going to be talking about that partnership, which is so very exciting. And we all believe in storytelling and activations around art and film to really expand the group of people that are engaged and are acting for the planet. It's so critical. And the intention behind Black Hole was to not do something a little bit unexpected. Like whoever thought that an immersive experience that would take you through an artistic rendition of going into a black hole and traveling with a black hole would have an environmental message. But at the end of the day, saving the planet is actually a bit of a spiritual exercise, because you have to think about the greater good, the wider fate of like all life, all wildlife, all human life, all marine life, plant life on the planet. You've got to think about bigger than our immediate needs, and that's a moment where we have to think about ourselves as one with the cosmos, one with something bigger than us. And often humans, because we have such a dominant position on this planet, we think that there's nothing bigger than us, right? And so, what better than a black hole to put us a little bit in our place and and have a moment of humility and have a moment of awe and wonder of like the greater amazingness of creation and nature. And there's been this moment of excitement about space. Actually, humans have been excited about space from time immemorial. But even in just the last couple of years with the eclipses and the aurora borealis, we've just had, there's been lineups nonstop at South by Southwest for Black Hole, but also when we brought it to Times Square and LA Climate Week and lots of different places, we've had so much excitement. And it's a moment of reflection and a moment of oneness with nature. Even though we're simulating it in an immersive experience. But that's, I think, a bit of the magic of immersive art, is it can transport you somewhere. So that's sort of just teeing up this conversation that we're going to have around art, immersive experiences, and nature, and how do we connect us back to impact for nature. So my first question here is to Kelly, who is my collaborator on not just the black hole. Black hole was prototyped in my house. Actually, it was a black hole room. But before doing the black hole room,
5 years ago already.
Yeah, there was 5 years ago. There was a series of rooms that we did for the Age of Union Center, and Kelly and I did lava cave, glacier cave,
the moon
Earth room, moon room. Actually, if we could show that slide. Talk to us about the role that immersive art plays in shifting perceptions and environmental challenges, and talk to us about some of those rooms and how Black Hole evolved from some of those immersive environmental rooms that we did.
Yeah, so Age of Union was such a special place. These permanent multimedia installations commissioned by DAX, collaboration with DAX. I think what's really important when shifting perceptions is the messaging. Messaging is really key, and one advantage that art has over pedagogy or education is that we can use the tools of symbolism and abstraction to create space for the visitors or the subject to project their own life experiences and their own reality onto the piece, and it draws them in. And in the Black Hole experience, for example, we have a little sort of crumb trail that they follow. They kind of all go through a similar experience, although they all have like their own subjective reality. But by the end, they've all arrived at like a common place, a common collective place. So how you use those tools, whether it be for environmental advocacy or other types of advocacy, art really has an advantage in that way.
Amazing. Such a powerful medium and unexplored. Like, I think we can really push, and I feel like that's what we're trying to do with Black Hole and what we're doing in our work together. Wes, how does storytelling through art compare to traditional conservation storytelling, and how do you go from the abstract of art to the reality of nature?
Thanks, Dax. I think one of the things that I wanted to pick up on was your throughput about life on this planet, and I think we often talk about life being in a distant rainforest or distant coral reef, but we are all part of life. Within ourselves, we have tens of trillions of cells, over which half of those are actually other organisms. We all contain up to 10,000 other organisms, mostly microorganisms. We are part of life. Life drifts throughout the planet. This is the only living planet in the solar system. This is the only living planet in the universe that we know of. One of the things that art, in my mind, does is it's inspired by the environment, and the environment inspires art. So you see often the historical threads of art, starting with cave art in prehistoric times all the way up to now. You see a throughput of nature because, of course, we are part of nature. And I think traditionally conservation has looked at storytelling in a very discrete way. let's go save polar bears. But really, I think what we're trying to do with art is actually put us back into nature, because we are not separate from nature. Even though we're in a place like Austin in a convention center, it feels like we're very distant from those rainforests, from those coral reefs. But in fact, we're all reliant on nature. We're all part of nature.
Absolutely. We're not separate from nature. We have to start thinking that way. Such an important thing to understand. Yannick, how do large-scale video installations make complex environmental issues tangible for audiences?
Okay, so if we want to bring the subject to be immersive, we're talking about engaging the sense, right? And the goal is to converge the focus of all senses into a message. And the finality is to deepen the connection to the subject. So there's many strategies you can take to make the experience tangible and the subject tangible to the audience. And you can either make it tangible like bringing an object in a place, like Olafur Elefson did with the icebergs in the cities, or you can confront the audience with the reality of the cause and showing it as it is, what is the impact, what is the result of a condition. And you can also create an experience that allows a perception and bring the subject on an emotional level. So, but I think this is like the goal. All of this is the goal. And then you need to choose the tools. It's either storytelling, data, technology, all of it. But the main thing about all those experiences and all those installations is you need to start by answering the question and find the takeaway. What is the outcome? What do you want to say? Because if you don't answer that question first, you may enter the possibility that the technology or the medium becomes the subject of the experience. And then if that happens, you miss the point and you don't touch the people and you don't engage them in the right, you need to find first in fact, what I want to say is the technology should be the brush and the message should be the painting. I think it's really the best way to explain what I want to say about that. So that would be my answer.
I love that. Technology is the brush. It's beautiful. So just to bridge the gap between awareness and action, we've kind of seen how environmental art can evoke strong emotions. I've seen that as people come out of the black hole and feel this connectedness, this oneness, this reflection, this smallness, but also this excitement. But just trying to think about specific strategies that help translate those emotions into real-world conservation efforts. I'm going to start with you, Wes. Can you share an example where conservation storytelling directly led to policy change or action, and what made it effective?
I think that this is something that we're increasingly using with conservation. One of the greatest stories that I know about was about a decade ago. The government of Jamaica agreed to put a large port within the biggest marine protected area within the Caribbean.
That's terrible.
No input from the local communities, no input from the environmental sector. This was happening very much in darkness. Over time, people started realizing what was going to happen, which was paving over some of the last known habitat for critically endangered species, like the Jamaica iguana shown here. One of the things we decided to do, even though everyone said this port is going to happen, it's $1.5 billion, there's a huge economic input. The company itself was actually blacklisted by the World Bank. It was a Chinese transshipment port that was going to go in. No input from the communities again. We ended up working with local artists, including Ziggy Marley and others, to actually get a campaign led by Jamaicans, by Jamaica Environment Trust and others, to actually start getting the word out. Once the word got out, we actually ended up getting stories within New York Times, National Geographic, and there was an outcry within the communities, and they felt, for the first time ever, they had their voice heard. And so over the course of a couple of years, there were a huge pressure campaign against the government, and the government quietly pulled out 2 years later, citing environmental concerns. Now, within a couple years ago, that part of Jamaica, which is the Portland Bight Marine Protected Area, was declared a wildlife sanctuary for Jamaican iguanas on Goat Island. So it's quite an incredible way of storytelling. That was not a campaign dumping a bunch of money in there. It was just the storytelling that got us there.
It's so. I can relate to one of those stories. I don't know if you have the slide on caught in the corridor, but we did a film. One of our early projects was with Sea Shepherd. 10,000 dolphins were being caught in the French fishing nets off the coast of France because huge trawlers were coming from Asia and from Northern Europe and vacuuming all of the fish, right? And basically the dolphins. And the French people were not, a lot of French folks in Paris were not even aware there were dolphins on their coast until we did the storytelling. But all these dolphins would come closer to the shore because there was no fish left out in the high sea, and there was basically, they would collide with the local French artisanal fishing fleets. And tens of thousands were washing up on shore, whereas this never happened before. We did a film called Caught. It was like the second film that we did with Sea Shepherd, just showing this campaign and showing how Sea Shepherd would bring dead dolphins to the foot of the Eiffel Tower and the National Assembly. And the French people were not even aware. They were, of course, not aware of this issue, but they thought the dolphin was a tropical animal. And through a premiere we did in Paris, and it's not like the film was seen by millions of people, but it caused enough people to put pressure on the government that we got the law changed. And it was a film that only cost maybe $200,000, but it actually potentially saved dolphins from extinction in that area with that kind of storytelling. And I think film is one of those first media where it's sort of you get immersed in this story, and it allows you to get through to people and bring awareness to something that they just had no clue.
I think that's a great story, and especially when we have situations which mostly in the environment situations are long-term or they're not very visible, including under the ocean. Of course, the marine environment is the only place on the planet that we industrially hunt wildlife. We call it fishing, but that's very different from the artisanal fishing that you're talking about, the coastal fishers. These are industrial, oftentimes hundreds or thousands of ships that are coming in and taking all life out of the ocean. And of course, now we're seeing this as a depletion of the ocean. The depletion of the ocean is actually leading to effects for climate change, coastal communities, and of course, half of the wildlife that we take out of the ocean now is actually either fed to farmed animals or to fish farms, so salmon farms and others. So there's a huge link to what you guys were doing in France and the broader community of our food system and the need to transition our food system.
So that's the real challenge, is out of sight, out of mind, right? That's why as soon as we started traveling to these remote areas, the other film was the Quarter in the Congo, I realized if we don't show what's happening in some of these places, there's no hope. But also we want to show action. We want to show that things can be done, because another gloom and doom documentary doesn't engage people. It doesn't create the kind of activism that makes things happen. I love to show, like with Corridor, when we started, that movie was about doing these forest land titles in DRC. By a year after the film came out, 1 million hectares of corridor where gorillas and forest elephants can traverse through areas that have villages, but now there's land title for forest, right? That prevents mining companies from coming in and disrupting these villages, but also disrupting wildlife. So it's just these stories that can really magnify something that's so remote for people,
Yeah, just to add in really quickly, I think you're on to what we're talking about with art, which is using art for impact. And I think it's not art to say there's doom and gloom. We actually know when you communicate to the right people and the right decision makers, you can actually make big change. And following up on the Corridor, Virunga, which was a documentary about the biggest national park in Central Africa and Democratic Republic of Congo, was actually successful as a documentary produced by Leo and others that actually helped push against oil extraction. That was something that was out of sight, out of mind, and now that serves as a huge beacon of hope for gorillas and other species in eastern DRC.
That's such a precious ecosystem. It's amazing what film can do. Kelly, how can immersive art installations be designed to leave audiences with a clear next step, whether it's advocacy, behavioral change, or direct support?
Yeah, so I mean, staying on the topic of film, I think, the original immersive experience, at least of the 20th century, aside from the fireside chats, of our primordial ancestors, it's been really instrumental in, breaking down the walls of bigotry, for example. There's still a lot of work to be done, but, first gay kiss on screen, for example, so 1972 film called Wings, or the first interracial kiss, Sidney Poitier and Catherine Houghton, maybe you remember Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I don't feel like, it would have been as powerful on television or on your phone, for that matter. I think being in an immersive experience like a cinema where it's completely blacked out, you're really drawn in. People with pre-existing prejudices, let's say, they're disarmed, so to speak. There's a big sound system, there's awesome sound design. And I think, if you can get them with, let's say, for example, we're producing a book. It's going to be like a small booklet after you leave the black hole experience. Takeaways, keepsakes, it could be a pamphlet. But if you get them right after that immersive experience, when they're sort of disarmed and maybe open to having their opinions or their perceptions changed, providing a different value set for them. I think that's one way to do it, starting with the immersive experience, but then giving them something afterwards that they can take away and keep with them. Maybe they'll return to it a few days later, or even like a week later. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because you have this moment where the art piece has taken somebody to another place. That's one of the incredible things about art, is just being transported, and you have this window of opportunity to engage somebody when they've had their perspectives shifted. It's super powerful, and that's something that there's very few other things that can do that besides art. It's really comes from a higher. It's one of the things that's of beauty that we bring into this world as humans. That it's so special. Yannick, how have your video experiences been used to mobilize communities or inspire on-the-ground action? And what makes an experience truly impactful beyond just visually thinking?
I think you need to find a balance in between entertainment and activism, or in between entertainment and the message. And because entertainment is important, it's what makes the subject digestible, accessible, and it allows to captivate the audience enough, in my mind, to let them challenge their perspective or provoke critical thinking, inspire awareness, and even better, action, of course. But if you go too much on one side or the other, it's not as perfect as if you find the right balance. So if you go, you can risk to, if you aesthetize too much the subject, you're gonna dilute the message and its urgency. And if you are too didactorial in showing the message not in a metaphorical way, then you gonna limit the experience, the resonance, and the engagement, because the people will less be connected to their feelings. So this is this is the challenge, but this is a fun thing to do as well, to find a balance. There's an example here of one of our projects that was about the St. Lawrence River in Canada, that we were at the same time showing the beauty of it, the grandness of the territory that it covers, but also talking about biodiversity and other challenges, and that the vastness of the territory, and that the environment was we were bringing those challenges into the experience as well. So at the end, people were able to connect with that river that is so vast that most of the people in the province of Quebec have souvenirs regarding this river. So you can connect your own experience, and you can as well learn about facts and what's there and what are the living, what kind of life is there, and what are the challenges, and how you can connect again and work and live in a way that you can keep that river alive. And so I think so that was the goal. So it's a one project where I think we were like able to find a balance, if we want an example.
Yeah, the St. Lawrence River, it's we've done a number of projects at Age of Union over the years, 5 years of doing restoration along its banks and working with Indigenous people, and Nature Conservancy of Canada has been a big part of that. But and we did a short film on it as well. It's for us in Montreal, it's a little, sometimes it can feel a little bit something in the background, or we think about it as a highway, to get goods. And then when you go out an hour from Montreal, you go out into the some of the floodplains. It looks like the Everglades. It's a very raw landscape, and you've got every species of whale in the St. Lawrence River. I don't think people understand that there's blue whales, and it's such a biodiverse place, but we sometimes see one part of it, and that's why I think sometimes an art piece, an immersive art piece or a film can bring people into falling in love with something that they maybe experienced just one piece of. And even though we're not all sitting on the river, you can experience the river and fall in love with the river and be drawn to the river, right? And then another thing that you said that really resonated with me is, with art, it's, yes, the artist is bringing their intention and they're bringing their own experience and their perspective, but you can never predict what the individual audience member brings to that viewing, right? They bring something of themselves, their own experience of the river in your example. And there's a magic there of like, now the art means something else, right? It means something else personal to them, and that storytelling can drive them into a different engagement than what you ever could imagine, right? There's a ripple effect. So that's also a beautiful outcome. Wes, I wanted to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities around conservation storytelling. What are some of the misconceptions or some of the things the barriers that you can run into when using storytelling to create impact for conservation?
Yeah, I think again, it's that there's a certain way to tell stories. I think there's, in our mind, every piece of art, whether or not it's music, whether or not it's interactive, immersive art, whether or not it's photographs, can actually tell a story. At Rewild, we have a campaign with local organizations all around the world called the Search for Lost Species. So it's a campaign of hope. There's many plants, animals, and fungi around the world that haven't been seen or documented for a decade or more. And we've compiled that list, which is a boring scientific task, but we've actually taken that into an incredibly immersive storytelling experience. So we've had amazing artists like Tyler Thrasher, Alexis Rockman, who've actually put into life through art some of these lost species. Many of them have never been seen or documented through photographs or videography in the wild. And so by using art to actually inspire some of these searches, we've been able to then inspire the storytelling that goes with that. We've gotten funding for local communities and scientists to go out and search for species. One of the coolest stories ever, which was the rediscovery of Wallace's giant bee. So you'll see the painting of Wallace's giant bee, and then this is an actual photograph in the lower left. That is the world's largest bee. Was not documented for decades. Team went out, looked for it in Indonesia, and was able to rediscover that. And the story was heard around the world. It had billions of media impressions. And then that led to the government and communities wanting to not only protect the lowland rainforest that species exists in, but also pulling out these lesser known species that people don't know. Most people think bees are one thing, the honeybees we look at, but there are thousands of species around the world, many different. These are actually solitary bees that dwell in the holes of trees, and they're very particular to certain types of cavities within these trees.
That's pretty amazing. Great application of storytelling. I wanted to just step back and talk a little bit about our partnership. Talking about impact, always have admired Rewild's work long before I started Age of Union. I think we immediately connected because we believe in those grassroots projects that are locally and indigenous-led, that have real scientific value, but are really creating real change. That if somebody saw that project, they'd be like, "Oh, things can be done," in the environment. We also connect because we're believers in film and art and all these other mediums to bring more people into the conversation. And so I'm really excited. We'll be doing a press release tomorrow, but we're sort of announcing this strategic partnership here because, I mean, ultimately my belief is, nonprofits can tend to sort of be like, this is my corner, this is your corner, but this is our planet. We can do so much more by joining forces and magnifying and multiplying and not recreating what each other does, but working together and doing something at a bigger scale for what is our common foundation, our common mother here on the planet. So maybe just talk to me about, what do you see as the potential for partnering with Age of Union, but also just, how can we all get involved and join forces in a broader way as well?
No, thanks. And this is actually an amazing moment in conservation. Just to give a brief background of Rewild. So Rewild is actually the merging of two different organizations together. So it's 40 years of history combined to create this entity, which is really a vehicle for conservation for people on the front lines. So our brand, in fact, represents our partners on the front lines, the indigenous peoples, the local communities, the governments, the NGOs that are actually on the front lines making change. We know conservation works. In fact, we published a paper a year ago that showed for the first time ever that conservation action, no matter what it is, whether or not it's protecting rainforests, restoring mangroves, actually works. What we need to do is scale up. And so Rewild as a brand is a unifying feature. So the way that we work is we have a core set of donors that funds all of our administrative and operation costs, and that allows us to scale up conservation in a way that hasn't been done before. And that's unifying because it's not about a brand, it's not about an ego, it's about the impact. And one of the things that's quite amazing is a few years ago when I read about the work that Dax was doing, he actually also wrote a book called Age of Union, and one of my colleagues said, you have to read this book. It sounds like it was written by someone at Rewild. And the fact is, as Dax says, we are all aligned and united in this. And Dax is literally one of the most important philanthropists on this planet for conservation. By coming together with Age of Union and Rewild, we're going to actually show that joining forces is the most important thing we can do in conservation. Because it's not that we lack the willpower or the knowledge to actually get things done. We can save the planet. We know that. And then we also know that the fact is every civilization in the history of this planet has collapsed in part or fully due to what we've done to the environment. Right. Now we're doing that at a global scale. So it is a matter of national security. It's a matter of global security. And for us, I think unifying together is actually a really powerful force. We're hoping that other people can come together and join us as well.
Yeah, it's well. Thank you for that, Wes. It's an absolutely, it's an important moment that we unify. Right? We can all be in our own circles, make impact, but there is so much more potential to do something in alignment. And I think that there are so many facets too, right? The conservation stuff absolutely works. I see it, when I go to the projects. But there's all these other areas where we can bring in more people, like the storytelling.
And I agree. And I just want to add in, I think this time on the planet is a time for selfless leaders that are focused on people on the front lines, that are actually focused on protection and restoration, instead of the selfish leaders we have that are focused on destruction and exploitation. We have to get to a world where we're at protection and restoration as front and center to everything that we do, and Dax represents that type of leader that we need for the planet.
Thank you. Very excited. We're actually having an event at Lolo on Friday to celebrate the partnership. Black Hole's going to be over there as well. So if you'd like to join us after 8, Wes and I will be speaking. And if you didn't get a chance to check out Black Hole Experience here, we can definitely take you through over there. So thank you, Wes, for doing this with me. It's going to be an incredible years ahead, and can't wait to see in a couple of decades, what we're able to do. And I'm sure this group of folks being united is going to just continue to grow. Kelly, I'm gonna turn to you. How do you ensure that immersive art remains accessible and engaging to a broad audience? You want to include as many people as possible. We're talking about unifying and just making sure that everybody can access it.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. I think what we've seen recently is museums are beginning to offer, free Tuesday or Wednesday admissions. In our case, with the Black Hole Experience, admission is free.
But even just making it mobile too, because remember when we did our exhibitions that were fixed in a specific hipster neighborhood in Montreal, even going mobile has been just broadening it so much. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, country music festivals, for example, Boots and Hearts up in Barrie, Ontario. Shout out Barrie. 3 Points Music Festival in Miami, completely different crowd.
Yeah.
The experience resonated, quite similarly with both. Obviously, Times Square, a lot of tourists, international, all over the world. There are people queuing up from, you name it. They were in Times Square that day. And I think what we notice is, especially in Times Square, that's a great example.
Right.
People are just inundated and really overwhelmed with the amount of all those jumbotrons, and it makes people a little bit anxious. And people lined up for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes to go in and have this 15-minute experience inside. And everybody coming out was just oh wow, I really needed that. I didn't realize how stressed out I was.
Moment of calm in the middle of chaos.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the question. I mean, I think, that is the challenge. I mean, my role in this is to try to ensure that the experience resonates with everybody, from people from all walks of life. My mom, she built a little house in the jungles of Costa Rica a long time ago, and whenever I go down there, my favorite thing to do is to sit outside, before sunrise, when it's still dark. And you can imagine, in a jungle, as the sun starts to rise, there's so much sound. There's insects, there's mammals, the monkeys up at the tree canopy, the wind's blowing the leaves, insects, snakes and lizards, and sort of everything in between. And, I close my eyes, and as it gets louder and louder and louder, I mean, that for me is the best immersive experience,
the original immersive experience.
What's interesting, and I think people feel like this, in a good immersive experience anyhow, the sensation is similar in that you don't feel like you're outside of the experience, you feel like you're part of it and you belong and you're connected to it. And this sense of interconnectivity is something that we've lost, especially, these days on our devices. Also, we've become a lot more egocentric. People are, I think, a little bit more selfish in this century. So, thinking only about ourselves and those around us, it's short-sighted. And I think feeling connected to something bigger, be it, nature or the cosmos in this example, I think that's what I'm trying to achieve. And I think that we've done it with Black Hole Experience.
I totally agree. Jenik, how do large-scale immersive experiences, whether they're digital installations or cinema, how do you navigate the tension between spectacle and substance, and ensure that the message doesn't get lost in the visual experience?
I think, emphasizing on what you said, Kelly, scale is a key word in that immersing people in a subject and putting it under their nose awakens awareness by itself. So if the experience is conveying the right message, you are in the right path. And like Kelly, I think that millions of pixels or thousands of pixels in a longer experience, by longer, I mean longer than a 10 seconds video on a social media app, is one of the other key. So it's like getting in the mood, living something, being immersed in it, like recreating what we can live in big space and in nature, and connecting to the infinite and giving headspace so you integrate within yourself the question.
That's beautiful. We'll do some closing questions here, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. What are the next frontiers, Wes, in conservation storytelling? Where can we take this? What do you see as the next opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, there's so many facets of art that can be brought into conservation, whether or not it's South by Southwest, where we've got the Black Hole Experience and others to actually be able to tangibly show art and conservation and the environment together. We also have partnerships at Rewild with the music festival Lollapalooza, which is quite interesting and developing in different countries where Lollapalooza is having shows. So getting musicians and their art into the storytelling of conservation. On top of that, we have quite a few things that we're working on, including a really great partnership with someone who brought me into the art world in a very deep way, which is an artist named Haley Mellon. She's amazing. She's an incredible artist herself. She's brought together some of the world's best contemporary artists to get artwork auctioned off to save rainforests and other ecosystems around the world. So quite interesting how you've got this connection between the art world and actual impact in conservation. And then the last thing that we do quite a bit of is interactive campaigns with people around the world. So many of you might, if you're old enough, know this campaign, storytelling around MTV Cribs, where people would take people into their house and show them what was going on. Well, our team has created something called Rewild Your Fridge, and that's looking at what we call the second energy transition, which is the food transition, which is how do we go from an ineffective, inefficient food system to one that's actually better for the planet, better for humans, and better for wildlife. And so it's actually bringing people in through the experiences of celebrities and influencers who've gone and changed the food that they eat to actually represent what's best for the planet and show that these systems that we think can't be changed can actually be changed.
It's so powerful. I love the fridge idea. Just having that as a visual, that's going to be a fun thing to bring. You bring that to Lollapalooza?
Yeah, that'll be a touring campaign. I mean, we've got an online campaign right now, but it'll be a touring campaign, and so we'll have people come in, and there'll be interactive experiences to be able to understand not only what the products are now, but what the products will be in the future that are better for us, better for the planet, and better for wildlife.
That's amazing. I think people don't connect how much our food systems have that impact on decreasing wilderness, wildlife. It's being replaced. All of that's being replaced in huge numbers by ranches, and it's maybe share a little bit on why it's important to do this storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that people think about food and our experiences, but really food as a system has been commoditized, and what we forget is that the food on our planet all comes from the energy of the sun that comes down as solar radiation, which is then made into life through plants. And what we've done is actually create a system where we're very inefficient. We're taking plants, we're feeding them animals, we're feeding them to humans. And what that results in, like Dax says, is that 83% of all the agricultural land on this planet is actually used not to feed people, but to feed animals or livestock. And so that's either through feed crops or pastures. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in the marine environment, half of the wildlife that we hunt is actually then fed to animals to feed to people. And it's a very energy ineffective system. It's the same thing as fossil fuels, where fossil fuels are just ancient life, the chemical potential of ancient solar radiation that we're then burning for energy instead of going directly to the sun. And we're working more and more, how can we get to a food system that's both effective for the planet and effective for humans? And that's looking at these things in terms of wildlife, in terms of conservation. And a fact that most people don't know, we all talk about the Amazon as this iconic story in conservation, talking about storytelling. One of the things we're trying to do with the Amazon is show, for the first time ever at a large scale, what's happening in the Amazon. If you look at the Brazilian Amazon, there's one threat that's actually taken out 95% of the deforestation in the last 40 years. So 95% of the forest that's been lost is actually lost from one commodity, which is cattle and other livestock. So either through cutting rainforest down, on average a hectare or 2 hectares per cow, or growing soybeans, which are then fed to pigs, cows, chickens, and other livestock. Yeah. And so for us, the future of the planet's going to rely on changing these food systems. We can't protect the Amazon without having the second energy transition. We can't protect the rest of the world without looking at how can we actually move to much more efficient systems of agriculture.
And that's where, like, an art piece or an installation like the fridge, it's kind of like a visual education. It's like another way to reach people where maybe some of the other things that they've heard, it either supports some of the things that they've understood about the food system, and just helps progress their understanding through something that's interactive, through something that's engaging, doesn't feel like a lecture, it feels like it's a discovery, right? It's like when you discover something on your own and you get to kind of embrace it in a playful way, or through an art way. It's something that you can feel like you own, as opposed to something that's being told to you. I feel like we all have to come to those conclusions by ourselves, right?
100%, and I think this is
it's
where
a personal discovery, right?
Yeah, and this is where documentaries and filmmaking play a huge role. So the Game Changers, if anyone hasn't seen it, please do see it.
Great film.
Was a great way to connect the athletic world with how the food system is set up, and also how the food system can be better. There's a second Game Changers that will be coming out, actually linking in the same issues with the environment. We're really excited about that, and I think it's a new way to tell stories. And again, I think, as you say, everyone has to come to these paths on their own, but we can do that through these mechanisms of storytelling and showing we can all change the planet. And it's actually exciting. It's exciting that we actually are now in a time where we can actually be efficient in our food systems and our energy systems. We can be efficient in how we actually change the world. Right. And we can learn from people on the front lines, like the indigenous people of the Amazon, that actually use food crops from within the rainforest to sustain their societies.
Yeah, I love how you say that it's all possible. I'm such a big believer in that. Now we just got to activate individuals. We can do that through some of the things that we've been talking about. Kelly, how do you see immersive experiences evolving in their role for environmental advocacy? What do you see coming up?
I mean, technology is key. XR, interactive. I don't want to say that technology is going to do all of the work for us, because at the end of the day, storytelling is definitely the most important thing. It doesn't matter how advanced your technology is. If you're not telling compelling stories and people aren't engaged and want to believe the stories that you're telling, then it doesn't matter how much technology you have. But going back to this idea of the cinema being an immersive experience, and us now being able to produce immersive experiences that are even more, let's say, immersive, more enveloping. I think, technology is certainly going to help usher in a new era of storytelling that will be sort of more immersive and will help people sort of cross that line from subject to object, where that which you're observing but you feel detached from, which is kind of the source of like othering, like when you don't feel connected to the other, you feel like, for example, you don't have to advocate on behalf of other people because they live somewhere else, or the migrant crisis is not going to reach our shores, or rising sea levels, or I live inland, or food security, that's not an issue for us. This type of mentality, I think that's what we really need to overcome. And again, immersive experiences, it can make you feel connected to everything, And I think that's key moving forward, to use immersive experiences and that technology to try to sort of mitigate, like this actual rise, in othering. I mentioned bigotry before. I feel like, prejudice, like it's all connected, in order to, get people to become, more active, more engaged, and more aware, of what's happening in the environment. They need to feel less like they're apart or disconnected, from other people. That, we're all humans on this planet. We only have one planet, and we need to work together.
Amazing. Thank you. And Janique, what innovations in digital art experiences excite you most in this space?
I think in terms of technology, every new development is exciting. Everything is exciting me and people like us at Silent Partners and in other creative company. But like, it opens new ways of tell a story. It's like a field of possibilities. So all of it is exciting. But what is the most exciting for me at the moment is meeting people like you and that are the real willingness to do and do the activation and the experiences and let us be your voice. That is the exciting thing in my mind. Like, oh, we can do it for real. We can tell those stories for real now because, like, experts and people who have the context trigger those projects, and this is really like the future of the immersive experiences. And the technology is the way, it's new languages, so it's like
I think it's like an incredible collaboration to start, at least these two worlds of conservation and art really getting creative, right? Really finding those solutions that could just touch people in a different way, educate, move people in different ways. It's all opportunity, right? And we have, like you said, we have all the tools to make the changes needed on the planet. We just need to activate more folks and have more knowledge. I'm going to open up open it up to questions now from the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Yes.
Stand on my tiptoes. Hi, I'm Kelly from the UK. We're working on a project to rewild the city of Derby. We are mentored by Tim Smith. We've got a master plan for our city by the Eden Project. We're working with Professor Miles Richardson, who's literally written the book on nature connectedness and the pathways and the government index that we use for nature connectedness. And it feels very grassroots, it feels very positive. We've got actual land that we're changing. We've got community gardens. We've got all sorts of things going on for nature and habitats. And yet still, from this place, there are organisations, councils, developers, landowners that we can't seem to activate from a place of hope and from a place of positive leadership and positive action. And I wondered if you could give us any pearls of wisdom to help us keep pushing this incredible rewilding of an entire city forward from your experiences.
What a beautiful project. Any advice?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. One of the things that we often say is that in cities we're disconnected from nature, and we see even here in Texas, cities like Houston, which have suffered very huge floods, because they were historically on wetlands that had been destroyed. Those natural systems were actually resilient to storms. We see this with other cities where, especially you look at the US, the difference between neighborhoods that are wealthy versus neighborhoods that are underprivileged is huge, and most relevant is actually the lack of tree cover and vegetation, and that can result in a huge temperature difference of 25 degrees Fahrenheit or more between these places in the city that actually have trees and other vegetation and ones that are just cement and factories. And so from a nature-based solution, I think one of the things that we see with a lot of the restoration and rewilding efforts in cities is it actually saves people money within the cities. So there's efforts to look at things like stormwater catchment and reducing heat during the summer, and all of those things add up to huge savings for a city.
Pocketbook issues, yeah. Expose folks to some of those realities or those advantages. I love that. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I worked for several years with an organization that would leverage data from conservation organizations for storytelling purposes, so to educate the broader public about the work that the conservationists are actually doing. And so when it comes to storytelling, there are obviously so many stories that you can tell. There are so many topics that demand more attention from the public. How do you choose which stories to focus on in your campaigns, and also how do you make sure that those campaigns are then giving back to the grassroots organizations doing the work?
I'll jump in a little bit on this one. So we chose our first 10 projects. When we selected projects, we chose them because we wanted to show different ecosystems. Like our 10 projects are on all different continents and a lot of different types of like marine ecosystems or forest or temperate forest versus tropical. But I think one of the key elements as well was the change makers that were at the heart of those projects. That those people were so relatable to me. I just felt like everybody could be so inspired that that when they saw the power one individual can make, that more than anything could create an activation in a person, just to see that power of the individual. One example that I love to give is Suzanne Lacan-Baptiste. She grew up on the Matura Beach in Trinidad and would see these mothers, these leatherback turtle mothers, the size of a small Kia, right, come up and give birth to 50 to 100 eggs, and then return to the ocean, and then you'd have all of these these baby fledgling turtles go back into the ocean. It was very mysterious and very sort of mystical thing that would happen in nesting season. As she got older, she saw poachers come in from the local villages, and it became a graveyard for these mothers and all the eggs stolen. And she started to fist fight people on the beach, and she's like, this is not happening. And over time, she changed this situation from a graveyard to a maternity ward. She became social services for this town, this village, and a lot of those young men that were doing the poaching are now part of her ranger team, and she's created a whole industry around the safeguarding of these turtles and experiences that you can go on the beach with a red headlamp that doesn't bother the mothers and witness this incredible happening where you have this 100-million-year-old species, a species that was literally the contemporary of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, that's going to make it, if they can just make it over this hump of us just, disrupting and destroying like they have on many other islands where now leatherback turtles are basically now extinct because of this one woman. Leatherback turtles in 5,000 to 6,000 of these mothers nest. We have to tell this story. And it's because of people. Obviously animals are very charismatic, and we love to learn about them. We love to see about them. But it's those human stories that inspire us to think about what can I do in my own capacity. Maybe it's something I do in my local community or even in my own home. And once you're on that path, it can be greater and greater. Other great examples. I've spent time with Jane Goodall. An individual that's made such a big impact. These are big names, but I mean, I think it's sometimes it's that human story that makes all the difference. Any other examples?
No, that's great. And I think coming back to, telling the story and getting the resources, whether or not they're monetary, whether or not they're communication resources, relies on having people tell the story. Chief Raoni of the Kayapo tribe in Brazil has been iconic. He's been pushing for rainforest conservation since the early 70s. He's now leading that movement. Before his efforts, there were never indigenous rights to lands in Brazil. He actually helped create laws that changed that. And now what we're doing is obviously getting more resources to him and his community to help protect their area. And you can see from space the territory is protected from encroachment from cattle farmers.
Amazing. Well, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you, audience, for being with us. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Janique. Thank you, Wes. Please visit Black Hole. We're at the other end of the expo hall, and I'm not sure when the expo hall ends today, but please check it out. And if you'd like to join us and celebrate the Rewild Age of Union partnership, we'll be at Lolo on Friday evening, where we'll be talking. You can chat with us, and as well, you can experience the Black Hole both Friday and Saturday. It will be out at Lolo here in Austin, beautiful Austin, Texas. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.